Hope you have come prepared because we are now going to the Offlane episode number 8, Esports Ready. My name is T Panda and I'm joined by Potom, and I'm also going to have a special guest later on today. Well, very shortly. We're not going to be having to wait for too long, but Potom, we've got some quite the episode for today.
We do, but you missed out on the best line you could have made. You could have said we have the meta classic dual lane indeed, but we're gonna try lane today. So I guess you didn't miss out on it after all.
I was thinking about the tri lane for a second, but we are definitely going to be going maybe even on an aggressive tri lane. But today we have 3 topics for all of you guys. So first of all, we're going to start with a big topic, and we have the right person to talk about it: the youth's path to esports. As the second, we're going to be diving into the broken matchmaking, as there's been a bit of issues lately, and also been for quite a long time, but it's risen up again. So we want to bring out the broken matchmaking, but also NADCL, which is the North American Dota Challengers League, which is hosted by PPD as a new league format from North America. We'll be talking about that. We will be talking about it later on in the coming episodes as well. So if you're not going to stay for that today, you're definitely going to want to hear that in a couple of weeks. But let's dive into Youth's Path to Esports, and we have our special guest along with us, ATL, or Coach ATL from Finland. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. So, yeah, glad to be here.
We brought you here as the expert on this topic. So would you tell a bit about yourself, where you come from, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a Finnish esports coach and also have some sports background. Done there a little bit of basketball, ice hockey, and even strength and conditioning, especially with the youth. And then in the esports side, I'm mostly come from League of Legends. So, been doing that in Oceania as well as in Italy. But most recently, I've been trying to kind of, learn different games that I haven't yet seen and see how things work in them. So currently, I'm the performance coach for a Finnish Overwatch team called Nurikki Esports. So that's kind of my background.
Okay. May I ask what games you also looked in, besides obviously Dota is what we have you here, like and any other maybe completely genres we haven't even thought about, or games completely off the mark almost that we didn't think about?
Not too much. I mean, being in the Finland, CS:GO is kind of the obvious one that I've tried to find a way to get to work on, but other than that, I'm kind of still waiting what happens on the Battle Royale, the PUBG game pick, but then it kind of didn't. And yeah, start waiting still on what happens there. But other than that, I haven't looked into other things yet.
It's always an interesting thing when we come from Dota and you come from League of Legends. I mean, I've started playing Dota 1 as my first MOBA, but I didn't really understand much about it. I started with League of Legends actually more jumped into it, got into what the game is about and what's happening here, learned the basics. Quickly after that, I quit. I played a couple games in between and I found Dota 2, but I was already there in 2012 with the beta. And then still really confused about what's happening because it was a really complicated game compared to League of Legends, even though I knew that they're both similar to each other. Came back in 2014 to actually start playing the game when I found a couple of friends were playing it, and it's taken me all the way. It's almost been a 4-year run for me. A lot of people have been playing for 7, 8, 10 years, maybe even more than that. But having Dota and League of Legends, we all know the differences between these two. But there are still a huge amount of differences in these two games, and especially when it comes to our topic here, which is the young people finding their first game that they start playing, and the first game that they really dive into and realize that I'm actually pretty good in this game. Can I go any further? We start to talk about how do we educate and how do we push these kids onward? How do we push them forward to keep pursuing and making it a dream? So what do you think about young people coming into a game and trying to find more about it and maybe even make a life's work out of it?
Well, yeah. I think that is a good question. Before we go to sort of sidetrack a little bit, I would be curious that you just talked about like, hey, they realize they're good in the game and they maybe and they don't know how to go pro and whatnot. How do you say, or what's your in your experience? How do you see young players that say like, hey, I'm gonna play a lot of video games, even choose on the initial game that is. And do you think that if you go pro in one game, you're pretty much stuck for it for the next few years until you hit a certain level where the switch is easier?
That's an
Um,
interesting way to put at it.
Yeah, I think it's personally like there's some transferable skills, obviously, like especially between shooters like CS:GO to Overwatch, or even somewhat between the MOBAs. But I would say it's quite similar actually to the traditional sports. If you're really good, let's say athletically really gifted and really good, like in football, you're probably gonna be all right at some other sports, or at least have some advantage, starting out. But obviously you can't expect that you're top 10 in your country in one sport and you automatically do different sport and are
Yeah,
so
that's
as
true.
well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
True. I mean, yeah, but I played StarCraft and I still can't micro meepos, so I guess that has a fair point. But yeah, back to T-Panel's question, at least.
Yeah, like when it comes to like people's traits, for example, if I bring a sports example of myself, I'm 194 centimeters tall, and people are like, why don't you play basketball? It's not like I just jump in there, because I was more the football and ice hockey person. I liked like, of course, I liked group sports. I didn't want to be an individual. I wanted to play as a group, as a team, and improve in that. But what was the actual click that made me feel like, is this my thing? Do I want to continue going on with this? And then change from sports to esports, realizing, well, esports back in the day when I was still a youngster, we didn't even know that there was a term for competitive gaming. We just had these small LAN tournaments against friends, and realized that, well, we're just playing this game for fun and we enjoy playing it together. But ATL, what I more wanted to ask about, that was a good point you brought out, that you don't just realize that I just want to do this, or you pick a game, which Bottom said, you don't just pick a game that you want to become good at. What do you think would be either an approach for it? How do you need a person to help you out with these things, or does it come from your parents or your friends? How do you pursue?
I think bringing it back again to that, like just like in the traditional sports, like it can come from many places. Maybe your friends play the set game. That's, I think, in gaming especially, is the most usual way. Your friends play League of Legends or they play Dota, and so you want to try it as well, and you go so. But then at the end, like it doesn't matter which thing gets you to try it. That at the end you will find out once you play it a little bit whether you enjoy it or you don't. There's no point of trying to become a professional at something where you might be skilled at but you don't enjoy it. It's because nobody becomes like good enough to be at pro level with like 1 year nowadays, even especially at Dota or League of Legends. Like you gotta be put 3-4 years and 10,000 hours, so it's you have to be able to have the motivation and the love of the game. So yeah, I think that's still a big part of it.
Some we're coming from different nationalities, and every country has their own way of building esports, from where you start, where you can take it onward. Like, for example, for just take another example from traditional sports, because they've existed a lot longer than what we have in Finland. You go to high school and you want to focus more on sports, and they will obviously have already an answer for you. So you go for the a sports diploma or something like that, and you pursue that dream, and you put your focus more into sports than the basic school subjects, but you're still doing both. How does that work in esports? We have examples in Finland. I think Potom has also some examples from Germany, but in general, how would that system work out, and how do people appreciate that? Because that is the big question when it comes to going to school. You say like, yeah, I'm going into this esports course, and people are going to look you down like automatically, which is, in our eyes, it's great, go for it, do it. But other people would still see it as maybe even a negative thing.
Yeah, one of the examples is looking at Reddit. Well, as usual, you see all these threads popping up like, "Hey, I set this time frame." Even when people have like backup plans saying, "I'm gonna stream for the next 12 months. I'm gonna try to become the next pro. I'm already 5K." where you're at a reasonable level, and then they just get laughed out of the room, or just start getting told, "Oh no, don't do this." Try to be convinced, and a lot of them actually give up. Is the problem more that these people don't get enough support, or is it more the issue that we don't integrate it as much into their lives? Because going or pursuing this career, or like the career that is, or your chance at a big career, is always at the cost of, like, you might be completely completely not destroying, but setting back your personal life, your experience, your education, whatnot, and that is a big risk. Like traditional sports, usually you still have something, but if you end up being, like, 25, you only ever did esports in your life, or being a gamer and whatnot, isn't the best perspective going into the real world after that.
Yeah, I think that bringing that high school example, and I think it's also in other countries than Finland and Germany. I think there's some other countries as well where you can get to sports high school for esports, and that's really good thing, because even though obviously some of people will look down on you and that kind of stuff, but also at the same time it brings more validity to it. It's easier for parents to support you in trying to become this esport player, or esport athlete, as I would like to imagine them.
Yeah, that's where the motivation and determination really kicks in.
Yeah,
Like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
yeah, it's easier for the parents to get behind you and so on, when they see that, hey, it's not just this guy playing in his room, but they he's going into this high school program in esports, and they have maybe coaching there. They help him to get to the teams. They demand some exercising and that kind of stuff. It's easier for parents and adults in general to then understand what it's about, because that's what it's becoming about, even though it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that if you have a physical sport, let's take soccer, football, for example. So, sorry, Ukrainians.
It's all right. It's all right.
Just I'm sure production will understand. But like looking at more traditional sports, if you become a football pro, or you going there, let's take ice hockey, whatnot. You practice a lot, and they see you physically. Like most of the time, you will leave your room, you go to a special place where you do it, you work out a lot, and like this kind of stuff really reflects more than just like, oh yeah, what did you do today? Yeah, I practiced 10 hours. And like, I think there's, for most people, there's no difference saying, I'm on my PC for 10 hours doing whatever, or I'm on my PC today practicing 10 hours. It looks the exact same to people, unless you go to a specific place. So you think we should see more stuff like boot camps and whatnot, especially at high schools?
Yeah, I think actually in Finnish high school, where I was part of running this kind of pilot program, we took I think 4 League of Legends players there, and they practiced there for like 2 months. As part of the esports high school, they went to all of the classes. So one of the great things there is that they had esports practice facilities. So instead of being in their apartment or whatever, they walked like 200, 300 meters. They were like living really close to this practice facility. They had 24/7 they can get in. So they walk in there, and then when they go in there, they practice. And there's like a psychological thing as well, where it helps you when you aren't, it's not the same place where you're like kind of relaxing and doing everything. Where you practice, you get more out of it, basically.
Yeah,
So
you're basically splitting up your leisure or your pleasure and your work area, and I think that is really important.
yeah.
For
No, that
personal
is.
experience,
Like,
that
if you
is.
have all of that in the same room, the same space, you never get the chance to so to say relax or chill, because you know that they're both happening in the same place. It's a good thing to have them separate from each other, to have the actual R&R time, the downtime that you can spend somewhere else and do whatever you want, play pool or go on a jog or watch TV, whatever you want to do as your R&R, to settle yourself down, and then have the other building where you do the actual work and the study. I had something in mind, but I forgot it for a second. So I think bottom.
That was a weird bug.
All right.
Never
Technical
had that one
difficulties.
before.
Welcome back. We're not even halfway to the show, and Bottom, I'll throw the ball back to you.
I missed out on the last two sentences, so excuse me if you mind repeating those.
Basically, what I said was I forgot what I was supposed to say, so I'll let you two still continue on the boot camp scenario. So ADL, they had these players in their own apartments. They had their the R&R place. They had their boot camp, or so to say, play place. What else fits into the picture?
I mean, I think something that's quite important for, as well as young players to realize, like a lot of them, when you look at your average 13, 14, 15-year-old player who is really skilled, at any given game, one thing that often happens is that they have very big missing gaps in their development as athlete, because when you talk about the traditional sports, you have most players, they've been coached since they were like 7 years old, and they've learned a lot of like mental skills and a lot of lifestyle skills at those ages. Whereas in esports, you get like 15-year-old player who's been playing the game for 2 years, and if he didn't like do any traditional sports when he was young, he's completely new to being coached. He's completely new to, taking critique, that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of those kind of things about, how to, especially the importance of the mentality and lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like
Talking about mentality, and you just mentioned like critique and whatnot. So, do you think it is how important is it to really get discipline? Like I know that in a lot of traditional sports, there is a lot of discipline involved that is get hammered in by coaches and whatnot. Do you think it plays an equal part in esports, or is it more? Is it less? Because I know some regions or some teams that could do with some discipline, I'd say. Like I experienced this firsthand from my team, that is. So
yeah. I mean, something that young players like don't realize is how much teams actually value these things. And that's not to say every team values these things equally, but I've been part of many teams, and I've seen a lot of half professional as well as professional teams recruiting process, and many of them place, the importance that they place on players' mentality is somewhere between 30 to 50%. So, when they evaluate player, the actual in-game skill might be like, say, 30%, and then you throw 40% of the, evaluation is the mentality, and then the 30% again is the communication and the, social skills and that kind of stuff. So
what you're saying is with my 4K and whatnot, if I communicate right, I can become a pro player.
not quite.
I
It's
tried.
more so
Sorry.
that requirement is still there. You have to be, you have to be the, you have to have the in-game skill. But what a lot of situations that I've seen is that you have these players who, on their country or on their teams or whatever, they're the big dog. They're the, in Dota it would be, I guess, the 7K plus player. And then they get to apply for like a tryout for a really big team, and there's 60 players in their position, all 7K plus. What do? Like they're not gonna pick you because you're 7.3K instead of this other guy who's 7.1K, Like they're gonna look at the all other things, and that's what's gonna matter at that point. So yeah.
Yeah, like they want the full package and not something that you're still a bit unsure about. Either if it's the person's social skills, if it's the person's age, which is a very important factor, because when it comes to games like all the other MOBA games, Dota, League of Legends, whatever, the reaction skill, the level of your reflexes are really huge factor when it comes to these games. And that is usually when we start to say that young people are better than older players, because their reflexes, their reactions, they continue to develop a lot faster, and they can react to situations a lot quicker. That is also in comparison to like older players. Say, for example, if both of them had the same amount of gaming experience, like 10 years in the same game, and they're both same MMR, you could consider that the older player has the team working skills, has the networking skills. He's capable of keeping a pack together because he's seen a lot. He's lived a bit longer. He has more developed social skills, and he knows how the package works out. When the younger player could be the star player who cannot necessarily, doesn't always, it does work in some situations, but cannot hold your feelings in check. you get frustration easier. You get really excited a lot quicker. You might get angry very quickly as well compared to the older player. It doesn't always apply, but in a major amount of cases, you do have to take into account the player's age in this case. But now that we're still talking about youth and how early to start your whatever, if you want to call it a career, you don't really necessarily even know it at that point. Someday in the future, maybe 5 to 10 years, we already have a structure where you know that 13-year-olds are capable of starting their coaching lessons with someone, and you always take like a big bunch, and then you get personal training as well on how you're going to work it out. But if you know you're ready, if you know you've done your work, someone has picked you up for a team or an organization, and you're 15 years old, what do you do at that point?
So, before you answer that,
Right.
you mentioned starting a career. So, where do you start your career? When do you know you're ready? Like, this is the main question. If you know you're ready, how do you get noticed? So, you mentioned ATL. You just mentioned that mindset and being positive or having a specific mindset, discipline, whatnot is important. But how do you convince somebody you just met that you're exactly that person they're looking for? Do you think that, for example, streaming might be a really good gateway in order to show, like, hey, this is how I usually am in my normal environment. This is not just like, going for an sending in an application, showing the best and whatnot. So streaming is streaming and whatnot playing a big part, or for that matter as well as like LAN events you might attend to. What's the path to getting noticed in the first place?
So yeah, firstly, there's two types of players. Obviously, there's those that they're like super talents, at young, and then they get noticed. And I would say that at some cases that's even a bad thing, because they never learn those skills of like what when nobody comes to knock your door and drags you into a team. What when you have to look for yourself. But yeah, so what for these players who weren't like pulled into a team by somebody, from their front door. So for these players, I don't think streaming hurts, but I also don't think it's huge positive. It's like it's an afterthought in most recruiting processes. Like, does this person have a following? Does he stream? Okay, cool, nice. I would say that one of the big things is LAN events, as you say, and generally team experience. Like that's also one huge positive thing that you can have is build your CV. Do you have a team experience? Do you have LAN experience? Do you have what level team experience do you have? All these kind of things that you can build in there, fit in there. Do you have team where you have been coached before? That's one huge thing. Have you ever been under coaching? So once you can get these kind of things under your CV and you start looking for teams, you ask, how does he get noticed? How do you convince somebody? You don't. You apply to many teams, and that's somewhat the problem in Dota, I think. From what I understand, there's not huge amount of like tier 3 teams or something like that. But in
there's a lot of so to say random stacks that don't belong into an organization. Usually organizations pick up these teams if they perform well in smaller tournaments.
Yeah,
or drop them if they don't anymore. Looking
or
at
drop
you
them,
guys'
yeah.
faults.
It also works the other way.
Yeah, that I see that's as a kind of a problem. I personally don't like when the organizations do that, because then they're not committed to, like when you have an organization that actually builds the team, so they recruit the team and so on, then even if somebody leaves, they'll replace him, so the team stays even if the players change. But in terms of like, how hard it is, I mean, I can only talk from the players I've worked with. But to give an example from the League of Legends, like I've worked with some players now trying to look for like semi-professional teams, and I think in some cases you have excellent situations for a young player, applies to 10 teams, gets tryouts from 8 teams, and gets offer from 6 teams. In other cases, you have slightly more difficult situations where a player applies for 40 teams, gets response from 2 teams, and doesn't get tryout from any of the 40 teams. So, you have to be like, again, the mental strength, you have to be resilient.
That is true. And like you can take a lot of examples from Dota, especially streamers. I'll bring out one as I really want to bring out the Thompson example because I've been watching his progress for quite a long time. He started streaming when he was playing with 5 Anchors. He kept on going despite the team got disbanded, I believe, in March, which was like they didn't fill any of the goals that they set up as a team, and they were running out on resources, and they were starting to use their own personal savings to keep on going and pursuing the dream of having a professional Dota 2 Finnish team to drive out into the Tier 2, even into Tier 1 level, but not quite there because the players, of course, they lacked the experience of being there, even though they had a great stack together. The team disbanded, and he was the only guy out of the entire 5 stack who kept on going. He played a lot of pubs. He was in the top 100 for a long time. He finally reached Europe rank number 1 alongside with Illidan STR. Then he went back to rank 2, went down a bit, came back up. Now he's playing in OG, which was a team that made through the European qualifiers, the open qualifiers and the closed qualifiers, dominated, went through. So that was one, like I don't really want to say Cinderella story because you've already spent a lot of time and effort.
Like,
it is in a way,
it's
like
the
if you
best
think about
case
it.
scenario, but it's like not everybody will be like Thompson in that regard.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna go
it's
everything wrong.
not gonna
There
happen
will
to
be, and I'm pretty sure Thompson had a lot of stones in his way as well. He tripped over on the way.
Definitely had, yeah.
And that's it's not about minimizing or like reducing the amount of stones in your way. It's about basically when you fall down, putting a mattress on the floor so you don't hurt yourself too much over it. I think that's the spot that coaches, for example, do provide for players, that if there's something wrong, they know somebody that, hey, I can, let's say we can go from mental breakdown to being outclassed and completely stomped in a game, for example. Then your coach is there to hold you up in terms of like, hey, you're still doing fine, providing the mental support as well as showing you criticism. And I think it's super important that both of these come from the exact same person, because if it comes from different persons, you might be looking on different perspectives. You take some stuff out of context. So that a coach is just there, and like you have a fixed coach for your team you can go to if you have any issues and whatnot, and free talk. I think this is one of the most important things we need to implement in these amateur teams. That's why I'm a big fan of like if there's like free coaching offers and whatnot, because coaching, it is a lot of work. But yeah, maybe we need to move forward. Like maybe we need to start paying coaches, but that's just my opinion.
That is one thing. I want to jump into one of the points I picked up some research. So let's take Kezu from Secret. We're talking about a pro team. I believe Secret was formed in 2015, if I remember correctly. That was after TI4. Because they were either formed after the TI4. I believe they came out in 2014 at the end of the year. So Kezu, one of the Offlane players from Germany, he's 23 years old. He was kicked out of Secret because Secret didn't achieve the results that they wanted, and they replaced him. But when he was playing for Team Secret actually he played from 2016 November till 2017 in August. He was asked by the Secret organization, the Team Secret organization, if he would want to make a youth team. So this is one of the topics I want to talk about now for maybe the next 5 to 10 minutes till we jump on forward, the youth teams. So he refused the offer because his response on his own stream was, "Why would I want to do that?" He's a guy who has a bright future ahead. He has achievements. He has the results to show that he's a capable player. A lot of stacks were interested in him. A lot of individual players wanted to create a team around with him. So do you think this is the right call? Because I think it was. Like, you pursue your own career, but there was also a chance that he could have gotten a job with Team Secret to create a youth team around him. What do you think?
I gotta go first, and then I'm gonna throw it over to ATL to get his perspective. So, first of all, I think it's the right decision to say no to this from Kez's perspective, that is, because he was a promising player, even though he was still getting outclassed by a lot of teams, and he was obviously one of the problems in the Team Secret at the time. uh, they were looking for better players to replace him, but they don't want to drop him. Obviously, I think it's a really good move that they actually ended up offering him a job in you could say in compensation that is. But if you're Keza Sport, you have to evaluate. What will I do with a youth team? Am I going to be the guy that is not good enough for Team Secret just for the youth team? Is this a good or is this a bad thing? From an organization perspective, that's the best decision you can make. You have the budget to run a youth team. You have upcoming players. So if something happens, like we know, there's a lot of drama in esports sometimes, as well as like in real sports and whatnot. And you might have like players dropping out, players getting injured. This kind of stuff can happen if you don't, if you're unlucky. Just having the backup youth team, a team that is already associated, maybe played a lot of times against the main team, so they know each other. They have a lot of synergy together already. I think this is something that was the best decision Secret could have made. The fact that Kezu declined, however, should not have deteriorated them from taking a different path and dropping the idea. I think just starting off a youth team in general, even if it's on a really low scale with like low budget and whatnot, that is still a good idea for the future. Like teams are always like, oh, we worry about the next event, the next event, the next event. They don't look 1-2 years in the future. I mean, sorry to bring it up, most sports, but you're doing the same stuff all over. Like you invest in teams and you drop them after TI every year.
Yeah, that is a recurring pattern every year.
It's almost a meme at this point, to be honest. But these organizations do not do that. Then yeah, and I think it results in more organizations picking up these big teams because they can't find any sponsors, or like pretty much just the scale of sponsorship required, or the scale of support required to acquire a Dota team in quotes drops fairly low, and then we end up with disasters like the Iceberg scenario. You know, like Iceberg Esports.
Yeah,
and we have that kind of stuff. So I think organization-wise, right call to make a youth team, but they should have stick with it.
So just to clarify a little bit, so were they offering him a spot as coaching the youth team, or like
as a player?
As a player, so they would build the roster around him.
Okay, so it would be like him as 23-year-old and then bunch of 14, 15, 13-year-olds. Like,
oh no, youth team basically in the sense of like a B team.
Yeah,
B team in terms of like we take 4 promising players, we give them some resources to work with, we provide them with an environment that they can improve in. Like we're gonna pay your housing costs, we're gonna make sure you have somebody that makes your schedule, because I know that's a huge part for players, which is really hard to do if you play Dota all day, to still schedule and contact the right persons and get the networking right and contact this player, this scrim. This is always really hard. So just making sure you have some resources from the start is really important.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a player with as the captain of a B squad with resources.
Yeah, so basically, that was so it's basically an academy team. That's what we, tend to call them in the League of Legends. Then the youth team is usually when you have the under certain age players only. But as an academy team, like, I think that was probably a decent, offer. It was very smart from the organization standpoint to try to make that. And I don't think it would have been a terrible idea for him necessarily to join, especially because, I think the big questions that come out from there is, was he happy with the coaching staff and the staff of the Team Secret at that point? If he felt he was improving under them, and then he was getting a lot of benefit from them, then I think it would have been a really good idea. Because there's, like you said, there's always chance of someone getting injured, meta changing and him being better in other meta or improving and taking his spot back. But then he has to consider, obviously, like any other things, like if he had some kind of what were the other teams like that he could have get into. You mentioned something about like the stacks and people without organization. I don't think that's necessarily promising, but as far as like if he had a chance to get into other big organizations, then I think it's reasonable for him to look to continue his career. But as you said, I think that the organization should have definitely made the academy regardless whether he joined or not. I'm definitely same page on that one.
Yeah, it is a little bit sad that in the end they decided to go against it. I mean, we could have had 2 secret teams then, but yeah, I think we're gonna move in that direction in general. More likely, especially in the Eastern scene. That is, I believe Panda want to bring that up anyways. If we compare the West.
Yeah, I will.
to East,
I will jump into that if you don't mind interrupting for just a second. Apparently, we had a little Discord crash.
I'm used to it.
So Griffin, he will have everything sorted out. So I was ADL for a moment, and I saw a very pretty Ricky for just a moment there as well. Hopefully, we'll get ATL's camera to work out as well. But he's still here. You're still here, right? Yeah. Thank God you're still here. All right. So
hello.
Moving on. Comparison between the West and the East, and this is something I really want to talk about. We'll try and squeeze it in. Now we're talking about Team Secret, which is a European organization, if I remember correct. I hope it's not North American. It's either European or North American, but either way, an international stack. When we talk about the West, youth teams, academy teams, they're pretty non-existent. You usually want to pick up the best players for your organization. You want to pick up the free stack, which is available, unsigned by an organization, and give the guys an offer and give the guys a chance. Then we trust in you guys. We'll give you the resources you need, but we want you 5 guys to play together and play with us and bring us the victory. That's the basic standpoint. When it comes to you fill in.
I mean, yeah, like as you said, that's the standpoint for the major teams if they stick with it. There's some organizations, there's different focuses, and you always have to. There's always different kind of sponsorships. Like you have a sponsorship going towards we provide you with X amount of money each month, and you do basically compete in tournaments with our name, which is more like the branding sponsorship. And then there's sponsors that actually want to grow into a market of Dota where they want to work there in the future, and it helps having a team. And these are like when they're expanding, these are like the most reliable sponsors, I would say, because they don't really care that much about the results. They're more lenient on those. But yeah, if it comes to youth teams, that's the perfect topic to jump into. So I'm gonna let you continue.
So when we go to the East, so we're looking at China, we're looking at Southeast Asia, but mostly we're looking at China. You have a team, say for example, Vici Gaming. Vici Gaming has 2 different academy teams, which are both performing in the highest level, tier 1, in the Dota Pro circuit, going into TI, Vici Gaming having 3 teams out of the 16 in total, which is an amazing feat. So they are doing absolutely great. So how many teams did he just say they have in total?
9.
9 teams. So these consist of the main roster, the 2 academy or sister teams, so to say, at this point, because they are at the same level. The rest filling out with youth teams that play in either the lower level or directly, as the word stands for, youth teams. So they build up their organization. This seems to work in China. It seems to work really well. I believe it works as well in the other games as well. ATL, I want to hear your input in this. You have the perspective of different games. In Dota, we have China ahead of everyone else.
I want to go first. One small point, because you mentioned in China this seems to work, and this is the interesting part. Because for sponsors, if you have a lot of teams in China, there is way more value that you can create off of teams. Most players stream on Chinese sites. The Chinese sites or the market is way more. And they don't only have like Twitch, YouTube, whatever the third is. They basically have like 50, 60 different stream platforms that all compete with each other and whatnot. And they actively seek out not as sponsors, but to pay for content they get streamed on by the pro players, because they know they bring in their fans with them, because there's a more following to the players than there is in the Western scene, I would say, at some point. And in the Western scene, it is more lucrative for you to like run your own personal stream and whatnot, make income off of that, like looking at people like Arteezy, PPD, and whatnot. In China, however, this all gets put under the brand name, and then you actually you stream where you get offered the most, or like the best conditions, that is. I feel like this exclusivity that they're providing is really good for these teams, but it also makes a lot of problems. So just take that into your consideration with the answer.
Yeah, I mean,
ATL, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that in West, like as you talked about the branding, like there's still a lot to be learned, like, but we've seen a lot of good examples that we're getting better at the West. Obviously, North America in League of Legends tends to, do this really well, where they're branding the teams first, instead of the players so much. And we've seen a lot of situations there where, the academy squad has, if the player in the main team doesn't act properly or they don't show the good attitude, they swap them out. Just like any other sport. And I think in the Europe, something that when we talk about youth teams in general, something that I think we have to consider in North America, what we will see in the next couple of years, 5 years, 10 years especially, but even more so in the next 2-3 years, will be that the university scene will blow up, most likely. That's my guess.
It already is.
It already is.
I was part of it. Best example in the Western scene, the UK. The UK and the US. And in the US, we have stuff like AVGL that focus on like a lot of college stuff, but in the US, it's a little bit different, so I'm not going to go into that topic that much. Looking at the UK scene, there's like a lot of amateur tournaments. Mainly, I was part of one of them is the York Showdown, where they invited like multiple small college teams. They weren't the best, and it's the UK after all, so pretty low quality Dota, anyways. But to not trash talk to them too much, we had a lot of university teams there, and just the ferocity we're up against, like we had actual rivalries between them already that had the reference from the normal sports, because there is rivalries. Like for example, look at football and whatnot. Like teams have these kind of we have to beat them, like they're our worst enemy and this kind of stuff.
Oh, we know everything about that with ATL, Finland versus Sweden.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your fault that Sweden is better than everything. But back to the UK. Yeah, they had a lot of college teams. They're actively supporting the scene in a really grassroots manner, and I must say, this is exactly what we need, what we will see in the future. Problem is, I know Germany is going to get excluded from that.
Yeah. So
we do not like these things.
Yeah. So what will happen in North America soon with the university scene? I would expect there's a certain law. I can't remember the exact name of it, but why the university sports aren't considered part of the sports program, and that will most likely change sometime in next 2-3 years. And when that changes, the resources that the university esports clubs have there will increase a lot. Yeah.
So that's absolutely be massive.
Yeah. So then you will have like, now there's couple places there who offer scholarships, full scholarships, but then it will go like almost everybody. And in Europe, as you mentioned, there is a lot of things with university and that kind of stuff, but it's a little bit mixed still, because in here we have in Europe we have the universities, and then we have the clubs traditionally, how the youth development has been done. It's that you go to a club, you don't go to your school team, you don't have your school soccer team or football team or basketball team or anything like that. You go to basketball club or so on. So it will be seen how it the puzzle goes together with the youths in Europe. But one thing I would say is that there is a lot of really good things going on. So it's something, again, next 3 years we will see whether it will be the organizations having the youth teams, whether it will be through the school system. But I believe in Europe as well, it will be figured out in the next couple of years a lot. Yeah.
Well, as much as I would like to continue talking about this topic, we've had already a nice 45 minutes discussing about this, so we have to go on. But until then, ATL, thank you so much for joining in as a guest today. Do you have anything you still want to add shortly to the end? I know you have a lot to talk.
Some self-promotions, some shameless plugs. Now is your time.
No, I like to promote my players sometimes, but like, basically, really happy to be here on the show, and I'm looking forward to maybe, sometime in the future, if the podcast keeps going on and everything, being in the episode of who knows what. So yeah, I'm definitely enjoyed my time, and yeah.
And
Alright.
also, congratulations on your team passing into the Assembly, which is the biggest LAN event in Finland. So your Overwatch team made it through the qualifiers, and congratulations on that once again.
Yeah, we'll meet there and talk more about it then. See ya.
All right, see you. And we're going to continue with the second topic of today, broken matchmaking. Potom, we've seen a lot of different types of matchmaking bugs and issues and complaints and whatnot.
All right,
Fill us in.
Let me start it with, first of all, there's nothing that actually works about matchmaking. So just
That is a harsh way to put it.
No, this is basically the point from where we start. Everything is broken. Like as usual with Valve games, that don't get patched. So yeah, we want to bring this on a long time for the show. I believe for the last 7 episodes, that is, because there were always like some complaints, some nasty server issues, yada yada. But the recent past has been just explosive with that. I'm quoting incidents such as the TI qualifiers where servers went down and whatnot, that kind of stuff, or systems getting overloaded, or patches mid-tournament, that kind of stuff. But these were more like aspects that were not as fundamental. So the worst thing about the broken matchmaking is because everything's broken. Like we can the biggest issues are, or right now that people complain about is the matches are completely unbalanced. We have multiple regions that have straight up shit servers, to say it like that. I'm quoting Australia. I'm talking about the SA region, which still has absolute massive issues. I'm talking about the Indian scene, for example, one of the biggest Dota playing countries, that is in the top 5, and they still don't have servers that work. Among other issues, then you have the entire C region, which is just you could say a clusterfuck, where nothing really works. And then you have the niche servers, like for example the Korean one, or Korean/Japan one, which is overrun by just people abusing the system. And then on the other hand, we have regions like South Africa, for example, that don't really have a server to claim their own, that and can't really play Dota, even though there's huge support in the scene for it.
I love it how you're going straight at it, like you're not leaving anything to question. That is true. SA has issues. India has issues with their servers. But what surprises me most is people like playing in the European servers, for example, queuing in Japan and queuing as a group of friends, like solo queue.
They just want to be big in Japan,
That is one thing, like you listening to K-pop or.
What? No, you did not get that pop reference. Shame on you, young man.
But still, like, you have 5 friends searching for a solo game in Japan servers. You set your common language as Portugal, for example, and then the game realizes that, okay, we'll put these guys into the same game. But even worse, they all end up in the same team. So it's like playing a party game, but increasing your solo MMR with this.
Exactly.
What's up with that?
Okay, so how it works is that, first of all, the server preference is completely, the language preference is a completely different approach to it. So the language preference is actually an extra server you queue on, but it only affects your teammates. So it doesn't matter if you play against 5 Russians, the server doesn't mind. It does matter what language your teammates are speaking. So yeah, it's how do I say this? Your servers are bad and you should feel bad. Like, just the system is absolutely broken. You can I can queue like the Japan Portuguese one. Even if they fix it, there's still multiple others. Like, let's say I'm gonna queue on the on the Arabian servers, but with, let's say, Spanish only. There's not many people speaking Spanish there. I mean, there's some, but I doubt the Portuguese scene in Japan is so big that we have multiple matches on.
True.
And
that actually does affect matchmaking, putting the language, right?
It does, completely. It changes up what kind of team you get. If you said to, like, it doesn't work with English and Russian, unfortunately, your West servers, which most people know. Same with the NA server in Spanish. But if you go to these niche regions, then the language restrictions really put a strain on it. And it's always the little cracks, because for Valve, it's a 50-50 scenario. They have the choice of remove the language restriction, meaning we do not have these abuses of the function anymore, but everybody else, the other 80%, will complain. If they, however, do not do it, then you have 20% of users that will still complain because it is broken on some servers. Basically, it's taking priorities from Valve, and there's no easy way to fix it. They have to either completely replace the system, removing the language option completely, which would be kind of horrible. Well, it wouldn't make a difference on Europe West, that is.
Yeah.
But it does help out in certain parts with communication and whatnot. But it would benefit the higher up scene, you could say, where MMRs really think. Because if you look at it, sorry, but the majority of Dota players is below 3K. So like the 3K MMR area, the 2K, even the 1K MMR area, they really benefit from the setting because they can actually communicate with the team, because nobody like if you try to become better there and nobody's actively abusing the MMR so much over there, because it's you don't need to, like everybody every shady person that just wants to, like, well, if it's account selling or whatnot, I don't even care, stop with that shit. But you don't mind like playing in that bracket, like 4 to 6K is where it's at.
And also, like, you have these people who are really into and really focused on ranked, which is a competitive way of playing the game. And they want to get better. They want to get higher in MMR. But they also run into this huge problem, which I definitely notice in party games. It does happen in solo games as well. But the huge MMR drops. You win one game with your stack, you get 17 MMR, when 25 is the normal average.
Yeah,
Plus minus 1, plus minus 2 or 3. You lose a game, you lose 45. You win a game, you get 18, 16. You lose a game, you lose 37. And you're like, why am I trying this hard to only get punished?
Well, I think this is more of a technical issue, because we actually had like Jeff, which is one of the if not the only Valve employee actually talking to the community on the Reddit, actually talking about this, that the algorithm is a little bit screwed over right now. Stuff like the role system and whatnot for the Dota Plus or Battle Pass, one of these owners, comes into effect. So they tinkered around with it, and it's not really balanced out right now. And it's a huge mechanic, so it probably would mean they have to take down matchmaking for like a day or something to fix it, which don't do that. It's gonna everybody's gonna go crazy. Or we're gonna see a total rework, and I think this is what we're gonna see after TI. That is that in the new season they're gonna start off with a complete new system where they switch it up from the get-go.
That will be interesting, because that will mix up a lot of things, but it will give people a chance. Some people may get punished, but they still know, like, if you're doing something wrong, it means that I don't play in the level I'm supposed to be at. And it does leave you some room for improving. But the way people see it at the moment is, I'm doing my best, I'm improving, but I'm not given the opportunity to go higher. And is what some people kind of run into. To be honest,
I feel like the seasonal reset was a nice idea. It was really poorly executed. But why not just say, screw MMR, we're gonna wipe it all. We're gonna make it from the get-go. Everybody starts at 4K and whatnot. Like maybe have a rough indicator, putting them into 3 groups. Remember when we had normal, high, and very high skill pool? Yep. These were 3 MMRs. We didn't even have numbers back then. And arguably, that was the better matchmaking than now. Because now it's so imbalanced, and you have boosters everywhere. MMRs are inflated. Boosters, smurfs, everywhere. You can't get away from them. I think this is one of the really, really big issues. Like, we only see the problem in cases of smurfing and whatnot if it comes to our attention, like of streamers and whatnot. But that's like the 1 to 2%. Like, 98% of smurfs and whatnot, they're undetected. There's nothing you can do about them. And you either more heavily restrict the matchmaking, or you just wipe it out, completely start it from the beginning.
So we will fill in our conclusion about this. Do we wipe out the MMR? Do we want a new system? Do we keep the old way?
I think we need definitely an adjustment to the medal system. Swap it up. Do not make these. The seasons were a nice idea. The problem is they last too damn long. Like, one day in esports is 6 days in real life, and we have like 4 or 5 months or times for new seasons. And basically, they implemented that to get rid of like account buying and this kind of stuff. but it didn't really improve the scene. It didn't work. It just keeps on going. Either like you need to find the right balance between a reasonable amount of games to calibrate or to basically
like last year's
settle in
Battle
on your
Pass, 40 games.
I just as it is right now, it's not going to work, and people are just going to be more and more disappointed, and that does draw players away. You need to have a feasible matchmaking system that works. Look at systems like StarCraft. StarCraft has a lot of flaws, but they did do their rating system right. Yes, it's a solo game, so the party one is not as affected. But even if you play like Fall vs. 4 in StarCraft, there's some that actually do that. Then you have a better matchmaking, arguably, than in Dota. I would even throw some stuff over to League of Legends, where we have a really solid system. For example, you can queue with 2 people for your solo MMR per se, and arguably that is a nice thing. I would like to see that instead of having like this only solo and whatnot, because we all know solo is a really toxic experience most of the time. And just improving on the system, having somebody to be with you there. I mean, the system's going to get abused no matter what. That will always happen. You have to try and minimize the effect on the rest of the players. And I would even argue it might be a good idea to validate matches more, per se. So if there's a booster or someone that get banned down the road, we already have it with like VAC bans in CS:GO, or we have it with bans in Dota. That is, if you played with a cheater and you lost MMR to him, if he gets banned, you get your MMR back. Why do we not extend this? Why do we not say, if there's a Smurf, we detect it, we ban it from Dota, or we remove it from Dota, or we just see, hey, this is a Smurf, so we devalue all the Smurf's games that he storms through, and just gives it to the other team? Why does it have to be a fixed value? If you lose to a team that is arguably better than you, why does everybody lose 50? Why not make it so that one team gets 28 points, but the other maybe only lose 8 or whatnot? Like, it's just not.
That is true. That is actually a good
makes
point.
me mad.
The fixed values are something that does annoy a lot of people, but that is a good point. Valve, if you're listening, there's some good points out here, and we would really want to share them with you, but MMR will always be a pain in the ass. It will always be our enjoyment. But we're going to jump on to the last topic of the day, and that will be NADCL, which is the North American Dota Challengers League, started off by PPD. And there was his post on Reddit 3 days ago saying about his fantastic year in the Dota scene and being really excited to participate in the international next month. So he will be a part of that with his team. And he's been working on this new league, giving a good structure for North America, for players. Like we've talked about these minor leagues that we've had. Maybe we'll get ourselves a bigger league out of this. What are your thoughts on this? Give us some insight.
All right, so from the get-go, I would say this is not your normal, amateur league. We set in, we just establish something and then try to make something out of it. This actually has some backing. First of all, we have PPD there, who is, despite all his salt and whatnot, he is known to support his scene, even if it's only an A, but he does support his region heavily with everything he can. And this is something to admire from the very get-go. So the second thing is, I know this is, the rules it's a little bit shaky from the get-go. So he did honestly take some stuff into consideration, which is nice. For example, they said from the very get-go that you're not allowed to join if you're a sponsored player. Meaning, sorry complexity, something you can't win. But beside that, where's the limit on that? Like, you say professionals can't compete. Where do we draw the line between professional and non-professional? Is because I have whatever, like I have a sponsorship with like a gaming chair company hit me up, or something. Am I professional? Yes, no. Am I disqualified because of it? There's a lot of small teams that play under an organization, but they don't actually make money from it. Like there's a lot of like fun names and whatnot. It's a little bit weirdly phrased, you could say, in how to describe it. Like, what is a sponsorship in the end? Thoughts?
Yeah, I was also thinking about the part of where do you draw the line between professional or amateur? Like there's a huge gap between these two, and
Oh,
you don't
that's simple. That's simple.
and not necessarily even an
Everything that
amateur.
is an NA is amateur. Everything in other regions is professional. Simple.
Well, in this case, considering the league, that might be true, as I don't think we have a similar system like this in Europe, do we? Or even in China.
We do have some, but in China, DPL comes to mind with the multiple tiers.
Oh yeah,
But
DPL.
that is super commercially run, and right now NADCL has no sponsors. They do not make any money out of this, I assume, and it all comes out of PPD's pockets. It's also an assumption, he didn't actually talk about it. So how will they finance themselves? How do they move forward? Do you just want to live on the mercy of others if it comes to these kind of projects? Or will you actually find some backing? Problem is, just imagine if you find some backing from some teams or sponsors, then will have to have their players play in this cup. Meaning, you will have a team or players with sponsorships playing in the cup that prohibits sponsorships. A little bit of an issue, I'd argue.
It is an issue, but I still like the concept because when it comes to NA Dota, which has always been claimed that they don't have the highest level of play in the world in Dota, but they're getting there, and they've been proving it from TI qualifiers. They've been proving it all over the year that they do bring out these players, but they don't have these outstanding teams. Maybe EG, for example, but you can't really bring out like +5 teams to bring out. Like Complexity was there, Complexity's out of there. And then they had a Swedish roster and whatever, but organizations coming out of there. This will also be a good foundation for those teams, those players especially, who want to pull up a notch in their own gameplay, learn, like as he states, develop crucial teamwork and game knowledge skills, which are very basic and very core alongside with your mechanical skills, which pretty much only you can develop for yourself. Where we talk about the youth, all the reflexes, reactions, all that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, but I'm still a little bit torn on the sponsorship thing. Like it's one of the big questions in the room. Even if you move forward with youth teams and whatnot, you will always have that question: what happens if? And what happens if is part of the answer question I had when I read this. Like, what does happen if you play in this league? Like, let's say you're the best one in the league. You beat all the other teams out. You clearly show you can compete on a tier 2 level of NA Dota, and then you get a sponsorship offer. And yeah, the original question by Reddit user was, what happens if a participating team receives a sponsor after starting the league? And the swift answer to that is, they don't have a set of policy for yet, but they imagine they could wait until the end of the season to sign their contracts, or they could just exit the league and we could replace them. Which is, why would you punish players for doing that? Why would you punish them for following their dream and actually getting a big step done? Like, why is this a thing? Is that this actively discourages teams from reaching out to network and to go forward? It's like, hey, please stay in an amateur team. We don't want you to actually succeed and get resources for yourself. Please just play from your basement and stay there forever and play within our league. This is highly questionable. This is the worst that you can actually set in a league. Like, these amateur leagues are built to, we're gonna improve, we're gonna show what we're worth, and then we might get a sponsorship, and then we can take the next big step. And they throw that out of the window and say, you're replaced, you have a sponsor now.
But then again, isn't that maybe an opportunity to go if they use this league as a standing point that this team is brought in, a sponsor gets interested in them? Isn't that exactly what they want? If they want to leave the league, well, kind of have to leave at that point, but they get themselves a sponsor, and the sponsor, it can either bring them a coach with it or just the basics that they want these guys to perform outside.
You forget the most important part. It does take away Dota they can play in a competitive environment. It excludes them from other teams they need practice against. There isn't many other cup that invite teams, so what you're doing is you have like 50 amateur teams. They play against all of them. They're not the best. They are. Let's say the hypothetical team we talk about is spot 1 in the league, beats everybody. has close games, gets picked up by a sponsor, and then they get ripped out of their environment, suddenly compete only against the pro tournament in the really big tournaments because there's nothing left. There is no other amateur leagues they can still compete in and play against the lower teams or to keep steady. They can only play against the really big dogs. And that means they have less Dota to play. That means less practice, results going down. You know what happens with results going down on most sponsors? They drop the team. They're back to square one. The rosters might break up. It is a really bad thing they set this rule, and I think it needs clarification.
Clarification indeed, and as this is just thrown out as an idea, the basic setup, how it's probably going to work out, they will probably make some changes to this as well as they start and launch the first season. Hopefully, at least what you've said, you brought out some really right and really good points. So I would like to see maybe some changes come into this. But we will be talking about NADCL in the future episodes to come. But we're closing off.
We're going to feature it.
We will be featured. We will close off today's topic, however. We are now done with episode 8 of the Offlane. I want to thank Coach ADL, who joined us earlier on today, and Potom for your bright insight. As always, it's great to have you on board. Hopefully, I haven't bored you guys as well with my with my own insight. I tried to bring my best, but I learned a lot in the process as we do this. That's why we play Dota. That's why we love this game, because we learn so much every day. I would like to thank all the viewers and Nerd Street gamers as well for letting us host the Offlane. We will be back next week on Tuesday. That will be the 17th at the same time. Is it 2 EEST? Is that
2 p.m.
I don't remember.
EDT? I'm not familiar. I believe EDT
I was also
is the summertime. It's the summertime they're on right now. Basically at the same time as usual.
Same time as usual. So 2 EDT or 8 CEST if you're in Europe. Thank you for tuning in today. Bye-bye.